What's up, everyone? Well, about 18 months ago, I did a video on this same root over rock pine tree, and during that video, if you want to go back and take a look, I exposed about half the roots. So since then, I have exposed the rest of the roots, and today I'm going to be doing some cutback since it is the middle of June, which is decandling time or summer cutback for Japanese black pines, and revisiting some of the structural decisions slash trying to figure out how to get this to continue on its way to being a really good bonsai. So 18 months ago was in December, and that's middle of winter here, and that means that there's actually been two spurts of growth. That would be spring of 2023 as well as spring of 2024. So the first thing I am going to proceed with doing with this is just to do some shoot selection and cutback, because I'm not even sure that I actually decandled it last summer. So just in case you're not familiar, let's get in here a little bit closer and take a look. So this is this spring's growth that started growing in early March probably. And then this is last year's growth. And actually, I think that that was the summer growth post decandling. Otherwise, I think it would be quite a bit longer than that. And otherwise, I would not have these three, actually four shoots all together. So what I want to do is first, I'm going to come back because there was no fall thinning here. And I'm going to remove a couple of these shoots so that there's only two things at this junction rather than four. That prevents swelling at the junctions. All right, and now because I'm trying to potentially use this branch as evidenced by the fact that I previously cut it back as a finished branch, I'm going to go ahead and decandle this. So the normal decandling is going to be finding the base of this year's growth and cutting off all of that growth. Alternately, I often cut back behind the node. So here's the node right here. And I'll cut back into these needles from last summer. So in this case, I'm going to cut back a little bit further. And then I'm going to take off some of these remaining needles and or scissor them in half to thin things out. So you can see I'm decandling in here. This portion back here is the sacrifice branch, and there's almost no chance that I'm going to use it because I have shorter, more compact branching in here that I've been using, as well as a whole other separate leader over here that potentially might be the top of the tree. Coming around to the other side, there's a lot of branches coming out in the same place. And if you recall from the last video, this actually all is new based on some strong buds, but this was the portion that I wired last time in order to set potentially a new portion of the trunk. So I'm going to come back to that in a second. Meanwhile, all of this sort of long stuff that's come out here, I'm going to go ahead and decandle. That one was a weaker branch kind of on the bottom that I might end up cutting off. And then this is a really strong one. In fact, it's so strong and it's right at the other one that I'm just going to cut it off entirely. And the reasoning is that I just don't want multiple branches exiting the trunk at the same place. So this one's also very strong here, so I'm going to cut that back into the needles from last summer. And same thing here. So when you cut back into the needles, rather than getting new growth at the node, you get new growth coming out from in between the needle pairs. So each needle pair has a dormant bud in the middle of it, and those will start to emerge on the growth that is left here after I make that kind of a cut. So there's two giant portions of sacrifice branch. I'm going to go ahead and take off this one that's more horizontal and leave the more vertical one there for the time being. I could leave this on as sort of double sacrifice. That's going to cause more wood growth more quickly, But in this case, I've taken it off to allow more light and air to the lower growth here that I'm trying to curate as the finish branching, and also to remove some of the hormone inhibition. So the sacrifice branch that's here will still slow things down to a certain extent. All right, and with these branches here cut, let's come around to the portion that I wired last time. And to start by I'm going to pull off some of these old needles so that we can actually kind of see in here a little bit. This section here is that branch, and I've got buds coming out in opposite directions. So what I'm going to do first is just kind of thin down these opposing branches so that there's only one at each junction. So I think I'm going to take off this one. And now the reason that I took off this one, which was the primary reason behind that decision, is that it's closer to this inside turn here. So this gets me a little bit further away. So with this branch thinned out, I'm leaving one bud here to potentially become another sacrifice branch. So at this junction here, which I may not even keep because this is out past this leg of large trunk that might not go with the rest of the composition. In any case, for now, I'm going to keep it, and I'm going to cut off this big portion. Now I have one large branch here. I'm going to leave that bud on it, and one smaller one here, which I'm going to decandle. So the point behind this is to, again, leave other potential sacrifice branches. So now I've left one sacrifice branch back here, one sacrifice branch here. Well, sacrifice branches in the making for when I actually end up taking this one off. You can see that this is the raffia I put on in the last video, and then I've augmented that with this 1/4 inch plastic irrigation tubing that's kind of nice and stretchy and easy to use in this sort of application. I'm not going to take that off right now because I want the wood in those roots to continue to solidify it up against the rock. So all I'm really left to do here is to analyze the overall structure of the plant. All right, so if I give this a bit of a spin here, you can kind of see the sort of interplay of the rock and the trunk and whatnot. This portion of the trunk has gotten a lot bigger, so it makes a little bit more compelling argument for that to be the trunk right now, but I also like this. But if I'm going to use this as the trunk section, then the tree would need to be tilted significantly so that this portion is actually sort of going up. That's definitely possible, and I don't actually have to make any real decisions right now. I just have to continue growing this. I could make some major modifications, but I think at this point it's just going to go out to grow for another year or two before I do anything major with it. Meanwhile, I should be, as a result of this decandling, getting a lot of tight buds in here, and this is the standard sort of development technique that I use, where there's one major piece of wood that the tree is pumping out growth on, and then everything else is being sort of cut back and managed in this early stage of development. So I'm still trying to get these roots to really bind to the rock and start seeing more kind of deformation of the wood that's being laid down. Right now there's a little bit of that going on, and I think the grip is looking pretty good, but it's going to get better over time. That wraps up this short decandling video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.